Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be going over the updates on the Israeli-Hamas war. I'm recording this on November 22nd. I did do a recording with John Hogue, part 3. I'm going to be replaying part 1 and part 2, in addition to replaying part 3, so make sure you watch that. But the big news for this crisis is the hostage exchange and a potential 4 to 5 day ceasefire, depending on how this all plays out. I personally think it's a bad idea. I think that this is only going to allow for Hamas to gain reorganizational capability. It will slow down the momentum of the Israeli IDF in northern Gaza. And I think the international community at large is placating to the emotional fallacy of the civilian deaths. Yes, there are a lot of civilian deaths in Gaza, but I take a very strong stance on this, and that is that if you don't solve the problem, it's going to metastasize and get worse over time. And there is a reason why they took so many hostages. And that is to basically drag this thing out and try to get the international community to follow along with that emotional fallacy. So and of course, people in general are stupid, and we are making a huge mistake. And we will all be punished for this. Mark my words, we will be punished for the mistake that's being made. Now, what I want to do is I want to read this article. This was published 19 hours ago on Newsweek. All right. And the title of it is U.S. warns Israel ahead of next phase of the war in Gaza. All right. So you got to remember, so there was negotiations taking place. Probably when this article was written, probably the first draft, Israel probably didn't accept the offer. It was late last night where the offer was accepted, U.S. time. Okay, so I'm just going to read like the first 2 paragraphs or something like this. The United States will not support Israel. The United States will not support Israeli forces expanding their campaign against Hamas in the Gaza Strip unless a plan is formulated to protect civilians evacuated to the southern half of the territory, the White House has said. Speaking to reporters during press conference call Tuesday, National Security Council Strategic Communications Coordinator John Kirby said that as the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, consider moving their operations to the south of Gaza, we have said we don't support those kinds of operations absent a cohesive plan by the Israelis to factor in how they're going to be able to protect what is now mathematically a dramatically increased civilian population in the south. All right. So the United States should be more forceful and say, Arab communities, you should be taking the refugees for a short-term situation as Israel is rooting out Hamas and destroying the tunnel system. The Islamic countries, the surrounding countries don't want to take them. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that the president's White House, his whole council and advisors and his cabinet, they don't care anything. They don't care about what's going on in the Middle East. They're caring about the next election, which is the general election in 2024. And they need this thing to be ramped down before that general election. They need it to ramp down before April of 2024, or it's really going to be a problem for the Democrats. And that's part of the reason why. So They're placating to the general election, and they're placating to the ultra liberal. The only way to solve this problem is to do full war. And it's not just the Gaza Strip. The reality of the situation is that they need to take territory away from Lebanon and Syria. They need to destroy Hezbollah and Iran. Now there are people that type in the chat or in the comment section, saying that, oh, you're a warmonger and you're evil and all that. I don't care. I really don't care. The bottom line is that for more than 50 years, we've been kicking the can down the road and placating to either oil interests. Now it's the ultra liberal interests, and trying to make sure that the Democratic Party has control of the executive branch. But they don't really care about the long-term effects of what's really going on. And the reality of the situation is that terrorism is going to metastasize. This isn't going to get. Tell me why, if there's a ceasefire, a long-term ceasefire, meaning weeks or months, and all the hostages are exchanged, how that's going to change the full dynamic of the situation. It's not. The reality of the situation is that the West Bank, all of it, needs to go back to Israel. If there's an interpretation on if the Gaza Strip needs to go back to Israel, it's fuzzy on exactly where the boundary is. Some would interpret it as they can stay, meaning the Palestinians in Gaza. But West Bank, for sure, 100%, that's Israel. Jerusalem, that's Israel. Parts of Lebanon and Syria, that's Israel. Parts of Jordan, that's Israel. Parts of even the Sinai Peninsula, that's Israel. That's not Egypt. And that's the bigger question here. And so how by doing this ceasefire, how's that solving the problem? It's just kicking the can down the road again. And this week's Parsha is dealing with Esau and Jacob and Jacob's ladder. And, Jacob dealing with Esau once his father dies, once Isaac dies, right? So, I mean, we're seeing, like I said, every week that goes by, there's a piece of the Parsha, the weekly reading of the Torah or the Old Testament, that seems to coincide with some of the events that are taking place. All right. Now, is that just representational bias? I don't know. Are you just reading into something that's not there? I don't know. Maybe not. But I'm telling you, I've been around for a while. All right. And for 50 years, we have not solved the problem. And the problem isn't Israel giving more land. The problem is Israel is giving land away for peace. There's no such thing as giving land for peace. So Israel needs to knock them out. It's very, I'm very strong on that. The Dow index is up by about 80 points. S&P 500 is up 8 points. And it looks like oil is trading down right now. All right, so let's go with the IDF spokesperson is talking about the ceasefire.
Spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, to talk more about the situation there. Jonathan, I appreciate you being here. It does seem as though there's optimism that we're close to a deal here. If that deal does happen, if the War Cabinet approves it, what does that mean for the IDF? Will Israeli troops remain inside Gaza even during...
So let's just be clear. They've already accepted the deal. So this was recorded before Israel accepted the deal.
This ceasefire, and what is the military's biggest concern about how this ceasefire will be implemented?
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. There are many moving parts, and we have to be very, very careful when we assess any deal made with the Hamas. Hamas has a proven record of not honoring commitments and firing after a ceasefire comes into effect. The last time they did so was in 2014, and they abducted an Israeli officer at the time. So we keep that fresh in mind. We will implement whatever the Israeli government cabinet votes on, and whatever decision is made, the IDF will implement it on the best possible way. Of course, our troops will continue to be present in Gaza. We will continue to be focused and deployed in the area, and to conduct whatever operations necessary to defend ourselves in accordance with the terms of the agreement. And we must be, of course, very vigilant and careful. We know that the enemy will most likely try to take advantage of this ceasefire in order to improve its tactical positions, and we have to be prepared for that scenario.
And you mentioned that you don't trust Hamas in situations like these. How does that affect the effort to bring these hostages home safely? How do you balance those two things?
There's a inflation index, 5-year expected. 5-year expected Michigan poll or data that was released, 3.2% versus a 3%. So inflation is gauged to be higher than expected. So keep that in mind, especially with the Federal Reserve perhaps raising rates again, especially with maybe de-escalation.
You know, we'll have to see what happens, right? Because it's a deal that is, according to the reports, and I think that your reporting is correct, it's also what I am aware of, but according to the reports, then it'll be on a day-by-day basis. We'll see how Hamas delivers on the agreement the first day, and then we will carry that on to the next day. But there will be room for a lot of vigilance and skepticism, and to be ready for any eventualities. We know that Hamas has complete disregard for human life, whether it is Israeli or Palestinian. They couldn't care less about the well-being of their own people. And of course, they're only using our hostages for political leverage. We keep that in mind. What they care about, Hamas, since they are a corrupt and hate-filled organization, is to kill Jews and kill Israelis. And that is how we look at everything they do and say.
Now, the IDF has already secured the release of 5 people that were being held hostage by Hamas. Have you been able to glean any information from them about the operation in Gaza?
Yes, from them and also from Hamas combatants that we have taken captive on the battlefield and interrogated quite thoroughly. They have revealed additional information which is valuable, and that adds up and is compiled by Israeli military intelligence to improve our situational awareness, and most importantly, to improve the ability to get our hostages back. Just for those who may have missed it, we are talking about 46 days. Israeli women, children, babies, infants, and elderly people, and men and women as well, are being held by Hamas for 46 days in inhumane conditions, in direct violation of everything that is right and human. And hopefully we will start seeing some of them back. But I can assure you that the aim of our war against Hamas is to dismantle Hamas, and that what we're seeing now is just one milestone in the bigger scheme of things, to get an opportunity to get hostages back, and then we will continue fighting Hamas until we eradicate them.
And there's obviously still a great concern about the Palestinians that are living in Gaza. Many of them have been displaced. If there is any sort of a ceasefire, would any of them be able to return to their homes, especially in northern Gaza, or is it still in your belief that they need to evacuate that area, get to the southern part of that region?
Yeah, the humanitarian concerns are very important. We want to make sure that the Palestinian civilians, the non-combatants, are safe, and they need to remain in southern Gaza where they are, and those that are in the north, still we call on them to evacuate, because fighting is not done in northern Gaza. As your reporter correctly reported, there is fighting in Jabalia and Zaytun, in other areas, other Hamas strongholds in Gaza as we speak.
Now, remember the article that I read to you that was from Newsweek about the United States demanding, a plan to reduce casualties going forward. Well, clear out North Gaza and tell them to evacuate to the northern Gaza as they blow away the southern Gaza. Great plan, don't you think?
We speak, and that continues until anything changes, until there is any type of agreement. We continue to fight and to attack the enemy. And we want to safeguard civilians. We still call on them to move towards the south. And once the fighting is done in the north, then I'm sure that we will issue guidance accordingly to the Palestinians. I hope that any ceasefire will be used by Hamas, first and foremost, to take care of the civilians in Gaza, the Palestinians who really need humanitarian aid. But something tells me, based on their behavior so far, that they won't be using it in order to make sure that Palestinian civilians are safe. They will be using the time and energy and resources made available for their military purposes and not to care for civilians.
I want to talk to you now about the fighting that's happened in and around these hospitals in Gaza. The Indonesian hospital, of course, is one of the hotspots right now. Your government's denied shelling the hospital, but said instead that it was targeting enemy fire from within the hospital. Do you believe that Hamas is also operating at this hospital, as you've said that they are operating at other hospitals? And do you have specific intelligence that would lead you to that conclusion?
Well, not only intelligence, proof on the ground. A few weeks back from the Qatari hospital, which was a very nice and well-established modern facility, Hamas operatives, combatants, fired at Israeli troops from within that hospital. And we have experienced the same thing with the Indonesian hospital, and of course, in and around Shifa. By the way, when we took the Shifa compound, not a single Palestinian civilian was wounded or killed. And that is not by chance. It is by design, because we fight while respecting the human dignity and the need for protection of civilians. Any loss of life of medical personnel or non-combatants is not the intended outcome, and we are working very hard in order to minimize the effect on civilians. It cannot, we cannot always guarantee it. I don't know specifically how these doctors died and what happened on the ground. I've heard the reports, we're looking into it, but I can say categorically, yes, Hamas systematically uses hospitals, and this has been proven, I think, beyond any doubt, that they use the hospitals for military purposes, or let's call them non-medical purposes, to fight against us. And this is also the case with the Indonesian hospital and all of the other facilities that are supposed to enjoy the special status of protection according to humanitarian law.
All right, Jonathan Conricus, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news.
Stay updated while I'm in New York here. He's a dipshit. All right. Now we're going to talk about how ludicrous our plan
under
is.
assault in the Middle East, and then launching a retaliatory strike against.
But since this is PNN and we're going to go to a commercial, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Health Max 35. I take a teaspoon of this a day, all right? And what this does is it neutralizes pathogens. You swish it in your mouth, you gargle with it, you swallow it, all right? Take a teaspoon of it a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day, all right? It's a very high quality product. All my products on my store are high quality products, and it is part of the anti-aging protocol. So take it every day. Another part of my anti-aging protocol is to bring down inflammation by taking turmeric. This will also help to boost up your immune system. So bring down that pro-inflammatory response because of what you eat, it inflames your body, stress inflames your body, chronic infections, inflames your body. Take this every day And what you're going to notice is that your body is going to go into more of a healing process. Part of the anti-aging protocol. Americans and even Europeans, but especially Americans, have way too much sugar in their diet, and that's the reason why we have a lot of diabetes that's going on, type 2 diabetes. All right, there are many reasons for diabetes, and there are different types of diabetes, but type 2 is a major problem in the United States. So to control your blood glucose levels and bring down that inflammation and to improve cardiovascular health, take ashwagandha. All right. If you have too high of a glucose level, it's not good for your vascular system. And not only that, it causes weight issues and a whole bunch of other problems with your kidneys and blood flow to the brain and everything like that. So take ashwagandha every day. It's part of the anti-aging protocol. You need to take vitamin C, right? Because if you look at people that are like crazy liberals, their teeth are falling out, they have gum disease, and they might even have scurvy. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take your vitamin C so you don't look like a crazy liberal, right? But not only that, if you take this with collagen and drink water, filtered, 64 ounces of it, and you take you apply the silver gel, the structural nano silver gel on your skin every day, what you're going to notice is your skin's going to improve. Why? Because vitamin C, collagen, and water cross-link and create a better dermal layer, and your skin will look healthier. Your skin will be healthier. It's not just look healthier. Take Clarity Factor. This helps to remove that brain fog. And what will happen is that you'll be able to concentrate at work, concentrate in school. You can take this once a day or twice a day. I take it twice a day, once in the morning and once in the late afternoon. And what you'll also notice is that your cognitive function will improve. It's not just memory and being able to concentrate, but those dendrites are going to improve. The connections of your neurons will improve. And because of that, if you train your brain, right, and you get proper sleep, you're going to have better cognitive function. You're going to have better brain health. So take Clarity Factor. It's part of my anti-aging protocol. I have very high quality structural nano silver soaps. This one is an oatmeal, but I also have lemongrass and peppermint and charcoal tea tree and some others. But go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description, and get the structural nano silver soaps. All my products are really important to take on a regular basis, but you can also use them as gifts, stocking stuffers and stuff like this for the holidays. So get a couple products and try to, slightly nudge someone to improve their health. It's a great way. It's a great way to, get someone on the path to proper diet, exercise, proper sleep, proper supplementation, proper brain exercising, reading, writing, challenging your brain, and you're gonna slow down the aging process. Trust me on this; it works. But you got to do it every day. You got to do it over a period of time, and there's a compound effect. Same thing, aging. There's a compound effect. If you don't take care of your body, it will start to compoundly negatively affect your body. But proper supplementation, proper diet, and exercise, there's going to be a compound effect that's positive for your body, and it will heal, and you'll slow down the aging process. So let's go back to the news. This is PNN.
Iran-backed militants operating this time in Iraq. The previous exchanges have been in Syria. So that happened after Tehran's proxies attacked American troops at least 66 times.
The last time we did a slide of that, it was at 46. Now it's 66. All right. Since October 17th, there's 66 attacks on our military forces. And that's just a few days ago, the difference. Like 4 or 5 days difference. So 46 to 66. You know what? I think our policy in the Middle East is not working. We need to kick ass.
And Hamas's war in Israel continues to increase the risk of a broader conflict as you see the expansion of this in very unsettling ways in many aspects. So with that, we want to bring in retired 4-star General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst, former Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, and Chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General, good to have you here today. We heard a little bit about what happened in Iraq. There was an AC-130 gunship that we're told was in the area when there was a vehicle attack on our base at Al-Assad, and it was able to respond to it rather quickly. What was your take in terms of what we've just heard from the Pentagon on all of that and how it transpired?
Well, I think what this was certainly is fortuitous for us, that we had the means to defeat the attackers and do it quite decisively with a C-130 gunship, which is amazingly devastating, and certainly preserved life in doing all of that. The attacks in the past have been different, where we have scheduled an attack and we haven't gone after the people who were directly involved in an attack. We've gone on after weapon stores and ammunition in a safe house where it's possible that some people were involved. But this is actually an attack is on the way, and we thwart the attack and kill the attackers. So
this is another example on how America is trying not to expand the war and not solve the problem and knock out Iran. We're afraid, again, afraid. And we want Israel to just, you know what, you gotta fight Hamas with your hands tied behind your back, because we're afraid of the international community's response and all these protests that are going on around the world. And oh, by the way, you know the reality of the situation is there's a whole lot of anti-Semitism that was always below the surface, and it just starts to boil up. And we're able to see it. And I'll tell you, people of faith on the Christian side, they need to wake up. You're a target too. You are a target too. Trust me. Trust me. These terrorists are going to be coming after Christians.
So this is obviously a defensive operation on our part that was very successful.
So let me ask you this. There are reports in the Washington Post that there are inner struggles at the White House among the Biden team over the response to these 66 attacks. And in those, you've got 62 U.S. service members who have been injured in all of these attacks. And we can show the map once again to show people where these are happening. And Sabrina Singh, who is the deputy press spokesperson at the Pentagon, was asked about, she's basically the question was, if the deterrence is not working. And here's what she had to say about that. Listen to this, General.
I know 66 is a high number, but again, we have days sometimes where we don't have attacks. So is it like, would you say that the strategy is not working if one day goes by where there's not an attack on U.S. forces? I'm not saying that that's the way to caveat it, but what I am saying is that we don't want to see this conflict widen out.
What do you think of that response, General?
Well, it's pretty ludicrous.
Right.
To be frank about it. I mean, since the Biden administration has been in power, I think we've had it's been documented.
There we go. Can you believe what she said? Well, sometimes we don't have an incident. So that means our policy must be working. Thank you, terrorists, for not attacking us every day. So we're gonna celebrate. I'll tell you, our government is run by a bunch of fucking idiots, bunch of pussies, bunch of cowards, people that are looking for participation medals. This guy, even though I like listening to him, didn't win a war. 4-star general didn't win a fucking war. Not one fucking war.
documented 150 something attacks on our forces in Iraq and Syria. And to remind our audience, why is Iran doing this? Their history is they don't get involved directly themselves. They've had a brilliant strategy for 43 years, use multiple proxies from foreign countries, not their own, to do their dirty work for them. And the purpose is to drive the United States military presence out of the region and also to destroy and weaken the state of Israel. That is what this is all about and has been about for 43 years. The history shows us, and I fundamentally disagree with those who say if the United States responded strongly, we're going to expand the war and we'll have a regional war.
But when he had a uniform on, why didn't he get the job done?
Regional war on our hands. The history does not support that conclusion. The people who come to that conclusion, it's their fear of this escalation that is driving them. And why do I say it doesn't support that? Because the proxy strategy has been largely successful. Secondly, the two presidents who challenged this and said, no, the only way we're going to deter them is we have to attack something that Iran values. And Reagan hit their oil platforms at sea and also the IRGC bases after they were attacking U.S. ships escorting tankers through the Persian Gulf in the mid-'80s. Trump went after the commander of the IRGC Quds forces to deter their attacks. Qasem Soleimani, well documented. Did the Iranians attack back? Yes, they did. It was a measured attack. And what happened after that? Nothing. What happened after what Reagan did? Nothing. History supports that Iran does not want a direct war with the United States. This is the issue that the administration and those who fear this cannot come to grips with. Oh, there's a possibility that's going to happen. No, well, of course there is a possibility it's going to happen, but the evidence does not support it. Why would Iran ever want to get involved in a direct conflict with the United States that would involve the destruction of the thing that they value the most, their regime? And they know that. That is why they have the proxy strategy. And that is, to me, it's fundamental, it's logical, and you got to see through it, and you have to find some spine to execute it.
I understand. Very quickly, if you can, General. You know, it appears, though, that Iran is quite emboldened at the moment. We're seeing these attacks in the north from Hezbollah. You're seeing a lot of activity to the east from the Houthis. They took a ship. They said they're going to take more ships that come into the region if they have any Israeli affiliation. There's an argument to be made here that Iran believes that now is the moment to succeed in their goal of finishing off Israel.
Well, I think there's something happening here with the three of our major adversaries, China, Iran, and Russia. All of them have become considerably more aggressive during this administration. I'm not getting into the politics. I'm just getting into the perceptions that they have. They believe the leadership is weak and the United States is in decline. And there is a window of opportunity here to take the initiative and achieve some of their national goals. You saw that in the invasion of Ukraine. You see it with President Xi's fundamental increase in 2 years of aggression in the Taiwan Strait, South China Sea. It's been amazing how much he stepped up his game. And Iran is doing the same thing. This is not independent of each other. This is a fundamental conclusion they've come with. They operate in terms of their own national interest, but they also are supporting each other. They have a common goal. Take advantage of the United States when they perceive it's weak and they think it's in decline. Whether that's it's a perception or a fact, it's irrelevant. That's what they believe, and they're acting on those beliefs.
Seems pretty clear and well articulated as always by you, General. Thank you very much. Always good to see you, sir. Thank you, General Jack
Yeah,
Keane.
great talking to you, Martha.
You as well, sir. Always.
Hey, everyone.
America needs to get a spine and get the job done. Instead of going, oh, Israel, we're worried about the bleeding heart liberal and the emotional fallacy. You know, kicking the can down the road is only going to make it worse. It always has, it always will. All right, so let's this is DW, and this is about the Israeli announced hostage deal with Hamas. So we'll play that. But before, let's go to commercial, because this is PNN. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin D that I offer. This vitamin D vitamin D3 is really important. You take it every day, all right? And what it will do, it will not only help with absorb calcium, but it will also help for gene expression. And if you don't have proper gene, it's a cofactor for gene expression. And if you don't have proper gene expression, then what's going to happen is your cells are going to be suboptimal. So as part of an anti-aging protocol, you need to, again, proper supplementation, but you take vitamin D3. I take vitamin D3 every day. Not only that, if you take higher doses of vitamin D3 and actually listen to what I said about how to heal osteoarthritis, all right, especially if you're, used to be an athlete. I used to have osteoarthritis, all right, in my knees, in my shoulder, in my elbow, in my wrist, right, my hand. And what you do is you take higher doses of D3. It depends on your BMI, right? On the dose. For me, it was 20,000 to 25,000 units. Okay. Each one of these are like 5,000 units. So you take that throughout the day. You don't take it all at once, right? And you drink milk, and you do light, very light resistance training on the injured joint, right, where the osteoarthritis is. But light resistance training, right? And you do this over several months. For me, it took 7 months. For some people, it takes 9 months. But you do it over many months, and what you'll notice is that you are healing the osteoarthritis. The reason why it's working is that you're able to absorb the calcium, right? But what is also happening is that late resistance training is remodeling the bone, the cartilage, and strengthening the tendons and the ligaments, right? Now, if you take high doses of D3, it will be toxic. And how you notice the toxicity of it is that what will happen is you'll start to get brain fog. The moment you start to get brain fog, then you go back down to a normal level of D3. Right? For me, normal level, I take 2 of these a day. So it's 10,000 units. So, but some people, because of their BMI, they may have to take as much as 30 or 35,000 units, right, throughout the day to remodel their osteoarthritis and try to prevent it. Now, the caveat, there's 2 caveats to that. One is the toxicity of D3 at high doses will give you brain fog, right? It usually happens at around the 7th or 9th month, right? It doesn't happen right away. If someone says it's happening right away, they're bullshit. So, but it'll happen around that 7th and 9th month, right? Depending on your dosage level. Now, when that happens, back it off, right? And go back to a low, your normal level or a lower level, like 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever. And then the brain fog will go away shortly after a few days, maybe 4 or 5 days or whatever. But what is interesting is that the pain for the osteoarthritis as it's remodeling for the first 2 months will actually increase. But after that first 2 months of following this protocol, right, that I'm telling you right now, then the joint will strengthen and the pain will start to get less and less and less and less, all the way to the point where you have no pain at all. And that's the amazing thing about this. I'm not the only one that has done this. Dr. Group has, promoted this idea with tennis players that had arthritis in their shoulder and their elbow and their wrist. They had much higher doses. There's been some people that have done all the way up to 1,000 individual units a day, up to 150,000 individual units a day. I don't recommend that. But those were extreme athletes that were doing that. Those were like the top of the top, right? So, and most people that are listening to the show are not the top of the top athlete, right? So, but take my advice. You can reverse osteoarthritis with what I just said, but you got to be careful. Toxic, too high of a dose of D3 can be toxic, and when you start this, it will as the joint is remodeling, as the bone is remodeling, it's going to be painful. It's going to be more painful than before starting. But after about a month and a half to 2 months, it's going to start healing, and you're going to have less pain. And you keep on doing that for about 7 to 9 months, depending on how bad the joint is, and you can reverse this. So I did it. It worked, and there are many other people that have done it and it works. So take my advice or don't take my advice. I don't really care. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the D3. I have 2 types of probiotic. I have a powdered form and a capsule form. You need a really good probiotic because your gut biome is part of that whole metabolism and that communication between your gut and your brain, and between your gut and your liver. So it can also help with mental anxiety or mental depression, right? Gut health is a big part of the protocol of getting your body into homeostasis, so it is healing, right? A bad gut probably going to have problems with your colon, right? But with a proper gut, you're going to have good communication between your gut and your liver. You're going to have better metabolism. You're going to have lower chances of depression, and you're going to have your ability to just fight infection is going to be better, right? Your immune system is going to be better. So take a good probiotic. I have 2 great probiotics on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This one's in the powdered form. I put this with hummus every day, and I mix it with lignans. So, and I'll show you that. And you can take it every day. Other people prefer the capsule because they don't want to deal with the powder. That's fine too. Lignans, it's a powder. This helps to boost up your immune system. Why is that important? Because you want to have a healthy immune system, especially your natural killer cells and your CD8 positive cells, to be able to seek and destroy cancer cells or precancerous cells. All right. If you have a poor immune system, your chances of getting cancer are higher. I wonder why that's so important in the post era that that we're in right now. All right. Now, lignans also helps with hormonal health for males and females. So if you're a male or female, or a giraffe, take lignans. It's going to improve your hormonal health, but also improve your immune system. It's really important, especially, if you're concerned about, a weakened immune system. Go to my store and get the magnesium and zinc. You need magnesium and zinc every day, right? And if you're sick, take a double dose of this. Why? Because it's been found that if you have an increased dose of zinc, you actually can fight a cold, right? And we're in the cold season. So those are some of the products that I offer on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and follow the protocols that I talk about how to improve osteoarthritis, or how to reduce cardiovascular disease, or how to slow down aging. If you don't want to listen to me, don't. But I'm not wrong. Back to the news.
A sigh of relief for the families of 50 women and children held hostage by Hamas. In the early hours of Wednesday, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu announced a hard-fought deal that will see the release of 50 hostages in return for a 4-day truce, as well as the release of 150 Palestinian prisoners. The pause in fighting will also allow for humanitarian aid and fuel to enter the Gaza Strip. Now, Qatar, which helped broker the agreement, said the starting time of the truce would be announced within the next 24 hours. Now, under the agreement, Hamas is set to free 50 of the hostages it took in the October 7th terror attack on Israel. In exchange, around 150 Palestinian prisoners held in Israel will also be set free. And as part of the deal, there will be a pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas for 4 days and access to humanitarian aid. Israel has also said it would extend the truce if additional hostages are released. And we're going to go straight to our correspondent, Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem. Rebecca, what more can you tell us about this hostage deal and ceasefire?
Well, it was a much awaited deal, as you mentioned. You talked about a lot of the details there. We're talking about 50 hostages, women and children. The breakdown, we think, appears to be 30 children, 12 mothers and 8 women, and priority, of course, being given to the elderly and infirm. We know that this is in exchange for what looks to be a 4-day ceasefire in hostilities, for humanitarian aid to be allowed into the Strip, but also for the coordination of the release of these hostages. We know that also Israel has agreed to release 150. That's a 3-to-1 ratio for the hostages, 3 Palestinian prisoners for every 1 hostage released. So we're looking at about 150, also women and children, Palestinian prisoners that will be released as a part of this deal. And as you mentioned, of course, a large amount of aid will then be able to be transported into the Gaza Strip, where it is sorely needed for the civilians who are suffering dire humanitarian situation there.
It's important to mention that I think that the ultra-liberal out there and the ones that were protesting against Israel and being anti-Semitic are thinking that they are winning the battle in the news in terms of perspective and how to conduct the war. The liberal is thinking, well, as long as we can keep on protesting, as long as that we keep on saying that, you know, Israel's bad and, you know, Zionism, these anti-Zionist type rhetoric that's out there, then we're winning because we're causing the ceasefire, the exchange of the hostages, and then they chalk it up in their head as if their mentality should continue. So the whole Arab cause and the whole Palestinian cause can continue on with its momentum. And remember what I said, that God is giving these ultra liberals just enough rope to hang themselves. And you'll probably see in an incident that will happen in the near term. You know, this ceasefire will probably last for about 4 or 5 days, maybe a little bit longer. But what will happen is something will transpire, and it'll show to the ultra liberal that you can't trust Esau. It'll happen, and I think that's what the Israelis are betting on. Right? But as of right now, you're going to have these anti-Israeli protesters, these anti-Zionists, these anti-Semitic individuals, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, anti-Christian, anti-family, individuals, they're thinking, well, we are winning we are winning the argument. No, you're not. No, you're not. This thing's gonna blow up. This is gonna blow up in their face.
They've been unfolding for weeks
Because
now.
today is the 22nd. All right. And remember what I said about, all right, so 5 days out, I don't know when the ceasefire, I think, is starting today, maybe tomorrow. So let's just say tomorrow. So the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th would get you to 5 days. The 27th. And remember what I said, that there's a cloud that is over the sensitives between August 1st and November 30th of this year. And that cloud, even though there's a residue of it on the sensitives, that the cloud will dissipate, or I shouldn't say dissipate, will move over to the rest of the world, what I'll call the non-sensitives. All right. And that there's going to be, people are going to feel pain, and they're going to feel pain in different ways. They're going to feel physical pain, they're going to feel financial pain, or they may feel emotional pain, but there's going to be a stress on them. And this is going to start after 11:30. So it's going to start on December 1st. Now, the ones that prepared themselves, that are either sensitive or non-sensitive, and started seeing this situation as a wake-up call to try to be a better person, then the influx of energy that's going to be starting to transpire on December 1st, which is the 19th of Kislev, all the way through the end of the month of Kislev. All right, so you're talking around 10 days, 9 days after that point, will be able to benefit from this, trying to better yourself. The ones that didn't, which is the far majority, and the ones that have the hubris because they were protesting and think they're winning winning the argument here, those individuals will actually, that influx of energy is actually going to be part of this curse. All right, this energy is like, for the ones that can absorb it in a positive light, it's the same light. But for people that are negative, it'll be a curse. And for people that are positive or trying to be a better person, it will be a blessing. So this light can be a dark light and a white light at the same time. It's the receiver that makes it. All right, starts on December 1st. And so we're starting to see, there's these moments in time where God gives people chances, right? And we're seeing this happening. If everyone just sat down and said, I'm going to be a better person, and they actually really do it, we'd have peace on this earth. It's not going to happen. There's too many stupid people out there, like the ones wearing a mask. But there's a test, and you're just seeing enough rope right before December 1st. Now, some people think, oh, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. You're an escapee from an insane asylum or whatever. But the thing is that, you must be crazy, Paul. The reality of the situation here is that I'm not the only one that senses this. All right, there are many people out there that are saying the same thing, slightly different. They have a slightly different spin on it, but we're saying the same thing. Now, take heed to the warning.
And of course, much needed fuel to be able to help run the hospitals, to help run telecommunication systems, and many other things, of course, generators to create power. So this landmark deal, the first cessation in hostilities, hopefully, as you mentioned, soon to begin within the next 24 hours.
Let's talk about timing. Is it clear yet when the first hostages will be released? Has there been any?
Why wasn't there a question not about the ceasefire, but is it actually going to solve the problem? And the answer is no. So you're kicking the can down the road. And so with everything that Dr. Paul Cottrell has said, since covering this, I don't know how many weeks now it has been now. 6 weeks? 5 weeks? Whatever it is. It's all coming true. The ultra liberal is getting what they want. But now God is going to show them that what you wanted isn't what you thought it was.
Have been any time suggested yet, more specifically?
Nothing more specific than that 24-hour window at this stage. A list of some 300 potential Palestinian prisoners has been released, and there is an idea that now Israeli citizens who may have been affected by something that the Palestinian prisoners were arrested for would be able to make a petition to the High Court. So there's a legal procedure, legal process, 24 hours being given for people to file a petition. If, of course, there are no delays there, then we'll start hearing a more concrete timing. We do know that they're going to be releasing potentially 12 to 13 prisoners per day to allow for the truce to keep on going, a sort of piecemeal part of the process. It's also an incredibly difficult process to organise the release of. We've been hearing, able to access the hostages prior to them being released and be able to administer some medical care there. But it is going to be a days-long process. And as you mentioned, something that may be extended should more hostages be negotiated to be released. For every 10 hostages, there will be one more day of ceasefire.
Is there anything more specific you can tell us about the Palestinian prisoners due to be released as part of this agreement?
Well, the idea is that they will also be women and children, Anya. There are boys on the list, but no men. There have been 300 names, as I just mentioned, that have been potentially released. Now, that's of course to find 150 that no one will take issue with if they're released, but also to allow for wiggle room for more prisoners to be released should more hostages be released. As I just mentioned, there is a sort of second phase of the deal kind of tied into this one, where we could see potentially more hostages released in exchange for more prisoners and more ceasefire, up to a maximum of 10 days is what has been published in the cabinet agreement so far. So in terms of more details on those prisoners, the list has been published. The names are out there, but most people are sort of slowly looking through the list before coming on air, and you see a lot of people who are listed for quite petty crimes. I think it's unlikely that we'll see anybody who has perpetrated any serious crimes being released. And we know also, I should add, that nobody on a murder charge will be released.
Now, some members of Prime Minister Netanyahu's coalition government did not support this hostage release deal. Can you explain to us why that is?
Bring the joy this year with gifts for your ride or dies.
Well, it's seen as quite a contentious deal by many members of the far-right factions. We saw 3 members of the Otzma Yehuda, the Jewish Power Party, vote against the hostage deal. They say this is playing into the hands of Hamas, giving them a free kick, if you will, because they say that by giving them these ceasefires, that this humanitarian ceasefire, even though it's only for a few days, will allow them the opportunity to be able to rearm, to re-establish, reconnect, and work out ways to go forward in this conflict, ways to be able to keep attacking the Israeli military in this war. So they were very against it, but in the end, an overwhelming majority did vote in favour, 33 versus 3, and even people who had slight concerns, including the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, it does appear that they were won over when departments like the Mossad and the Internal Security Services, the Shin Bet, said that they were in fact on board with this deal and they thought that it was good. that seemed to convince a majority of people to vote in favor.
Okay. Now, again, the Prime Minister, Israeli Prime Minister, had previously resisted entering into any kind of ceasefire deal. Why has he agreed to this one?
I think it's the overwhelming pressure that he's been facing by the families of the hostages as well as the Israeli public. And this has affected, you know, the psyche of Israel and Israelis. And I think there's been a lot of pressure on him. We've seen, you know, protests, we've seen marches, and we've seen lobbying to particular ministers. We've seen the families even in the Knesset with heated debates with parliamentarians. So, you know, the Prime Minister is under very, very severe pressure to try to get all of the hostages out, of course, but some hostages are seen as better than no hostages at all. And it is what he has been saying has been the second aim of this military operation. One, of course, being to eradicate Hamas, but the other, of course, to bring the hostages home. And he has to try and do everything that he can to make that happen. And we're seeing that the pressure has mounted and that days and days of negotiations, also negotiating with the right factions of his government to try to make sure that everybody is on board. And now, obviously, he's been able to agree to, you know, he's seen parts of the deal. He's been able to agree to this deal, I should say.
Thanks so much for that update, Rebecca. That's Rebecca Ritters reporting from Jerusalem. Now, we're hearing first reactions from those most directly affected by this deal, the relatives of the kidnapped. 63-year-old Gilad Kongold has 7 missing family members who are believed to be among the hostages held by Hamas. On Wednesday morning, Gilad described his feelings after news broke of the truce and the hostage deal between Israel and Hamas.
One side, I'm happy. Second, I'm worried. Okay, because nobody told me that my family will be in this deal. Okay, there was 40 children inside Gaza, and they go to only 30. Where are the others? I don't know. I hope that everybody will release. It's terrible 7 weeks. I think it's never happened in my life for sure, but in the history of the.
Like I said, Israel should not have conducted the war based on the assumption that they were going to bring the hostages back alive. You got to get the war completed. And sending the hostages and negotiating some sort of ceasefire or some sort of longer peace agreement isn't going to solve the problem long term. So this person, let's just say his family members are, let's just assume that his family members, I just had a text message from the Harvard Club. All right. You see, you get real news in CNN. All right. And so this is the Harvard Club in New York. All right. As we gear up for another delicious Thanksgiving, we're excited to hear about your favorite pie. Last year, stuffing took the crown for ultimate side dish, but now it's all about the sweet and savory pies that steal the show. Which one is your top pick? Apple, pumpkin, sweet potato, or pecan? I think it's pumpkin. So I have to vote for pumpkin. All right. I'm sure that Stephen Benu at Israeli Live doesn't do that. I'm pretty sure that Dave Hodges doesn't do that. And I'm sure that Lisa Hayden doesn't do that. All right. Okay. So back to the important thing. He wants his kids back or his family members back. Understandable. And again, I don't have any skin in the game, so it's easy for me to say. But the thing is that how is him getting his family members back solving the problem long term for Israel? See? So they get kidnapped again, or someone else's family gets kidnapped or killed? Solve the problem. And if your kids are part of the sacrifice, so be it. Oh, that's so mean, Paul. But we wouldn't be at this we wouldn't be here at this problem if we solved the problem 50 years
You have made like too many hostages, too many children, too many babies, too many women. I don't know how I feel right now. I want to be sure that my family will release at least the grandsons and my daughter-in-law, and then we continue.
If you want the performance of stainless steel, the versatility of cast iron, and the convenience of non-stick, then you want Hexclad.
And for more, I'm joined now by our Middle East analyst, Shani Rosanas. Shani, good to see you. This deal's been weeks in the making. Obviously, the hostages were taken on October the 7th. Tell us more about what's led to this breakthrough.
Well, I think Israel has realized that its strong operation in Gaza is not yielding the result it wanted. At the beginning, there was still hope. There was one soldier they managed to, Israeli forces, IDF forces, managed to release. They realized this is not going to happen. There's growing international pressure to bring more humanitarian aid into Gaza. So it was clear this needs to happen, and Israel wanted clearly always to say we're going to pound, we're going to crush Gaza, and we hope this will make Hamas agree to concessions and to bring some hostages to be released. And finally, Israel feels like this has yield the result that it wanted. There's also, for Israel, when it comes to the offensive, on the ground, it's the time to move from the south, from the north to the south of Gaza, and it seemed to be a good timing. But also the key here is also for Hamas. Hamas wants and needs time to recoup, to get fuel, which is the most important thing they're also getting from the deal, aside from humanitarian aid. And it seems like both sides have realized 47 days of attacks and counterattacks have not really yielded much more. For this moment, there needs to be some change.
And we know that Israeli citizens have 24 hours to petition the High Court against the release of the Palestinian prisoners as part of this deal. How likely is that, and how would the High Court react?
We will see petitions. We already know of several organizations, mostly identified in the right wing, with the Jewish Power Party also, that we've heard that were objecting this deal. They will petition. The court will traditionally, before I go.
Remember what I said about this infighting that's going on in Israel between the right and the left, all right? And that there's even the left, the ultra left, we're desecrating Orthodox prayer services during Yom Kippur in Tel Aviv, all right? And there's this infighting within the country of too much power is moving towards these liberals, and that there is a loss of conservatism, especially religious conservatism, in Israel. And it's a concern. Now you got to remember, if you look at, quote, Zionism, right? They wanted to root out, a lot of people that aren't Jewish, they don't really understand Zionism, right? But there was a concerted effort within the state of Israel as it was founded to try to slowly titrate out the Orthodox community and turn Israel into a secular society. All right. And in many ways, it's been successful. Now, to have a vibrant society, you can't be homogeneous. There has to be, some sort of understanding and a mix of different people, right? But you get to the point where you have the ultra left trying to literally desecrate on purpose certain biblical precepts. That is going too far. And that's the internal battle that's going on in Israel. Now, that is a microcosm of a larger problem in the world in terms of numbers. Spiritually, the problem that's happening in Israel is probably more so because of the Holy of Holies is there. But in terms of absolute numbers, you have the ultra liberal in the world that is destroying the family unit and destroying religion and destroying, affinity to country, destroying economic systems. All right. So this infighting between conservatism and ultra liberalism is a problem. That's why I framed that the real evil ones here are the ultra liberals, and they're going to be judged. She's proven my point. Now, most of the reporters will side on the liberal side and not on the conservative side. The problem that they are having in Israel is very similar to the problem that we're seeing with our politics that's happening in the United States. And that is that the liberal is trying to stack the court so conservatism can't take hold. They want to rewrite the rules. They want to rewrite the rules, right? Well, the problem is that the foundation that the state of Israel was built on was to try to water down the religion, to water down the precepts of the Torah. They wanted to not, they wanted people to not go and learn Talmud and be in the yeshivas. They wanted to be a secular society. And that's okay. I mean, there's aspects of the society that makes it vibrant to have secular knowledge, right? But when you have it, when it goes too far to the left and it's now forcefully desecrating precepts of the Torah, and there is this kind of existential threat that's happening in Israel between the observant Jews and the non-observant Jews, and people aren't paying attention to that very fact.
Or I've always said, this is no decision for the court. We pass the ball to the government. This is a fully political decision. We trust in the government to take the best decision on that. The procedure still needs to be made. They still need to petition. They will probably be rejected, but this also takes time that needs to be calibrated into the system of how, what the next steps are.
Tell us about the general response within Israel to this hostage deal. I mean, obviously, it's been a massively emotive and emotional situation in Israel.
It is. It's, the hostages' families have been living through hell in the last 47 days. And there's always in Israel, there's a lot of emphasis on the psychological warfare of Hamas and the feeling that, this is an ongoing torture. And so now it's the same thing, because one of the reasons we understand there's been a delay in the agreement on the deal so far was that Hamas refuses to take responsibility on all the kids and their moms that are held in Gaza. They said, we know of only a certain amount of them. Israel was pushing them. You got to take responsibility on all of them. It's still unclear who of the 30 kids that we know of and their mothers will be released. And that also means that families, all these families that have been united in the last 47 days together in this effort to bring back their loved ones, they're torn apart between them. Some of them will get the best news that there are. Some of them will still be left hanging. And there's also the fundamental question. If I am a woman, there will be women released, but there's a man that is wounded and needs treatment. Why would I get a priority over that? These are internal moral dilemmas Israel is torn with. It's not a happy day. There aren't many happy days in Israel these days. And this one also very cautiously has a glimpse of hope, but I don't think we will see a lot of gushing and public, expressions of real joy. Everything is still very emotional and very tense.
Shani, Rosanna, thank you so much. We'll come back to you later, but for now, thank you.
If you sleep on your side, I bet you hate your pillow, and this is why. They might be as fluffy.
Now, in a statement before the cabinet meeting in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stressed that the pause in the fighting that's been agreed now does not mean the end of the war with Hamas.
We are at war, and we will continue the war. We will continue the war until we achieve all our objectives, eliminate Hamas, return all our abductees and missing persons, and ensure that there will be no element in Gaza that threatens Israel.
the Israeli Prime Minister there. Now, my colleague Terry Martin spoke earlier to Peter Lerner. He's a spokesperson for the Israeli military, the IDF, and he asked him when the first hostages are likely to be released.
Indeed, the framework is being processed. We have a due process in Israel, and of course, there's a legal process that is undergoing. As your reporter Rebecca announced, the names of the terrorists that are going to be released has been announced to the public, and anybody that has a problem with that list can appeal to the Supreme Court, and that only after that process is completed will there be able to be an instruction to the military to hold its fire and to enable the release of the hostages and the terrorists into as agreed. The situation on the ground continues this morning to be a situation of combat. The IDF is continuing to pursue Hamas terrorists wherever they are hiding. We're destroying and dismantling the tunnels that we are encountering and engaging the enemy wherever they are.
Does the Israeli army have a role in the actual release process? Do you know? Are the IDF forces going to be escorting the hostages out of Gaza, delivering the released Palestinian prisoners?
Well, of course, the situation is, first of all, the role is to hold fire once we receive that instruction. That in itself is a huge feat because we have to be in defensive positions. We need to make sure that what happened in 2014, where Hamas continued to attack us during ceasefires and abduct Israeli soldiers, doesn't happen again. So, of course, there is a significant role in maintaining and implementing the government's instructions, but we will do so nevertheless. The reality on the ground is one where, as you rightly quoted Prime Minister Netanyahu, is Hamas still need to go. Hamas still can never be allowed to wield this sword of death above our heads ever again, and that is why the pause in the hostilities, the pause in the combat will take place. But after that, we are intending on to continue our operation in order to relieve the region and bring home more hostages. The hostages, the youngest is 10 months old. This is the enemy that we are facing, and we are determined to bring all of the hostages home and create a better security regime for Israelis and Palestinians alike.
Now, part of the deal, as you mentioned, is a truce, a 4-day truce. Obviously, there's still fighting going on there. Is there fighting happening right now as we speak, Colonel Lennon?
The operations are ongoing, and we are achieving our goals as we speak, absolutely. The reality on the ground is that Hamas are still engaging our forces, and we are seeking them out and pursuing them wherever they are. So they come out of tunnels, launch RPGs against our forces, and we are destroying the tunnel network as we speak. The situation of hostages has been, and it goes hand in hand with the operational achievements and directives that we've been guided to since the beginning of the war. And we need the hostages home, and we also need Hamas to go wherever they are. They need to be pursued.
How concerned are you that Hamas will be able to use the truce to regroup and rearm, especially given that Israel has reportedly committed to at least a partial suspension of air reconnaissance during the truce?
So our activities will be paused in accordance to the government's directives. That pause is in order to enable the access of humanitarian goods, of supplies to the people of Gaza. The people of Gaza are not our enemy, but Hamas is the enemy. And of course, this enemy is a ruthless, merciless enemy, and we can't trust them, and we don't trust them. So of course, we will be watching very, very carefully and utilizing all of the tools available to us in order to address that threat. And indeed, it is a threat. But the idea of and the possibility of bringing the hostages home in this case is of utmost importance, and that is why we are focused on bringing them home.
Now, your stated goal is to eliminate Hamas and remove any military threat from Gaza. How close are you, Colonel Lennon, to achieving those goals?
So we understand that we have this destroyed extensive presence in the northern Gaza Strip. Several battalions have been dispersed and destroyed and dismantled.
We are engaging the tunnel warfare, the tunnel capabilities that Hamas had pre-positioned and built over the last 16 years in northern Gaza and throughout. And we are engaging them wherever they are. Indeed, they still have operational capabilities, but they are definitely on the run. And I would say the result of this agreement, the framework of releasing hostages, is a result of the extreme pressure that the IDF has put on Hamas, on its leadership, on its organization, and its ability to conduct its operations against us. So I would say we're moving closer every single day to achieving our ultimate goal of securing and restoring safety to the people of Israel, Israelis living in the communities surrounding the Gaza Strip, but not only because they continue to fire rockets at us, and this is something that we won't accept.
And that was Peter Lerner, spokesperson for the Israeli army, the IDF, speaking to DW earlier. Now, Germany has welcomed the deal between Israel and Hamas. Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock described the agreement to release some of the hostages as a breakthrough. She also urged for vital aid to be distributed among the people of Gaza. Germany, as well as the United States, the UK and the European Union, have rejected calls for a long-term ceasefire, arguing that it could give Hamas time to regroup. We're going to cross straight to DW's political correspondent Matthew Moore, who joins us now from our parliamentary studios here in Berlin.
But we're going to do a commercial on P&N. I have two different types of structural nanosilver gels. I have this easy dispensed mechanism that you just pump it and it will come out. You can keep this in your bag, to travel around to work or whatever. And you apply it the exact same way as this silver gel, structural nanosilver gel. Actually, this is 24 ppms. This is 35 ppms. But you apply it the same way. And that is, you put it on your hands, around your mouth, or around your nose, lightly coat your nostrils, lightly coat your eardrum, your ear canal, around your ears, right? And it'll stay active for 5 hours. It's much better than Perel. Perel is an alcohol based, so it evaporates and can crack your skin. Structural nanosilver will not crack your skin, and it actually will heal your skin. So, and on top of it, if you use it as a topical, right, and put it on your skin, around your face, and your whole body overnight, and you exfoliate it when you wake up in the morning, you do this regularly, you'll notice that your skin will improve. And when you mix it with the vitamin C and take the collagen that I offer on my store and drink 64 ounces of water, then you're going to start seeing a major improvement below the skin, not just above the skin. So this is a great product. It'll also help to heal cuts, abrasions, minor burns, acne. Right? So get the products on the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Another great product that I have is the multivitamin. It's easy to digest, and this has a new label, a new bottle, right? But it's the same multivitamin that I've been carrying. So please go to the store to get this multivitamin. It's easy on the digestion, and you need the minerals and the vitamins as cofactors for enzymes for the proper enzymatic activity in your cell. When you don't have that, you're going to be subpar in terms of enzymatic activity, and you're not going to, your metabolism and your cellular function is going to be subpar. So taking vitamins on a regular basis is really important for your health, right? On top of taking, adding that to the protocol. Remember what the protocol is. It's neutralize pathogens with structural nanosilver. Reducing inflammation by taking the turmeric and the ashwagandha, right? The turmeric and take the ashwagandha. That brings down the inflammation. And then you need strong antioxidants like resveratrol and C60. So I have a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, and an 8 ounce of C60 in coconut and avocado oil, right? You take a teaspoon of this a day, and what that will do is bring down the reactive oxygen species. This is very potent, right? It works really well as an antioxidant, right? It'll bring down that reactive oxygen species, and that cellular stress, because of the reactive oxygen species, that cellular stress will go down, and your mitochondrial health will go up. When your mitochondrial health that goes up, you'll have more ATP and you'll have more energy. All right, and that means your neurons will be firing better. That means your cells will be performing better. So when you're taking the cofactors that you need, like the multivitamins and the D3. Remember I said the D3 helps with gene expression as a cofactor, and you have more ATP because you're taking this, because this is reducing the stress on the cell and improving the mitochondrial health. Then your cell is performing better, and it'll be able to fight stress better. And that includes your immune system. So a big part of the anti-aging protocol is C60. So neutralize pathogens with structural nanosilver liquids and gels, reduce the inflammation with turmeric and ashwagandha, take the C60 to bring down the reactive oxygen species and to boost up your ATP. And then make sure you take those cofactors like the B complex and the multivitamins and the vitamin D3. And your body is going to be performing at a much better level. All right. So take my advice. I've been on, a health protocol since I was 16 years old. All right. And, a big part of it was antioxidants. And as products came to the market and the improvement of the supplement industry over the decades, I've added to the protocol. And where the protocol is that I take, I take an extensive amount of supplements. All right. But, the key part of it is neutralize pathogens, neutralize the reactive oxygen species, bring down inflammation. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Berlin. Matthew, has there been any other reaction yet from Berlin to the news of this hostage deal, apart from what we just heard?
Beyond that statement, there really hasn't been much reaction, Anya, not from the Chancellor or other government ministers, which I think perhaps speaks to a sense of cautious optimism. Some senior MPs, though, have been tweeting. Michael Roth, a former junior minister in the foreign ministry, who happens to be in Israel this morning, tweeted a photo of a meeting with relatives of hostages, and he wrote it was an important step, but we can only rest when all the hostages are free. Another MP tweeted saying it was a good deal, but that it was vital that, quote, Hamas butchers were held accountable and disempowered. Now, going back to Annalena Baerbock's statement, she specifically pointed out that being liberated would not heal the suffering that these hostages have endured. And again, she talked about the need to use the pauses to get aid to Gazans.
And what do we know about any German nationals who may be among the hostages?
Commercials.
This holiday season, however you celebrate, Cadillac is.
Yeah, well, we know that of the some 240 hostages being held by Hamas, we understand that a small double-digit number of them hold German citizenship. Last month, actually, some of their relatives traveled to Berlin to lobby Chancellor Scholz and President Steinmeier and other government ministers to do all they can to bring their loved ones home. And for a German audience, it really brought the conflict closer to home. Relatives were on the talk shows, they were in newspapers, and basically part of their campaign was to keep their loved ones very much in the thoughts and minds of the German politicians, but also the German public. And I remember speaking to one 90-year-old man whose sister and brother-in-law were held captive by Hamas, and he was telling me that he's helpless, but he got a few minutes with Chancellor Scholz, and he told them then that he wanted him to put pressure on Egypt and Qatar. And I got in touch with the family again and the representatives, and they say today they don't know whether their relatives will be the ones that will be liberated, and they're basically under a cloud of uncertainty, and they can only hope and wait.
So do we actually know if Germany has played any role at all in these hostage negotiations?
Well, from the beginning, German leaders have travelled through the region. Chancellor Scholz had talked with the Jordanian king, with the Egyptian president, and the emir of Qatar, all key players in the region, and importantly, conduits to Hamas. In an interview with DW this week, the Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock was quite candid about the diplomatic negotiations, going kind of behind the scenes, saying how sensitive they are, how tricky it is to negotiate. She was talking about the fact that you're dealing with the political wing of Hamas, which is in Qatar, and it's very different and it's separate to the jihadist wing based in Gaza. And she talked about the efforts that the international community were carrying out, where they're trying to get Hamas to put all the hostages in Gaza in one place, just physically have them in one place. I think they felt that would improve their welfare and make it easier to ultimately secure all of their release, and not just a few groups at a time. So again, just really underlining how fraught this is, and coming to an agreement is.
Okay, now we heard the foreign minister earlier saying that the truce should be used to get aid to Gazans. What help is Germany sending?
So officials, describe the situation in Gaza as disastrous, and they have basically pledged more and more money to United Nations and the Red Cross there. I think the number now that Germany is sending to organisations is 160 million worth of aid this year, making sure it gets to Gazans is really important. They've appointed an envoy to coordinate that, to get the food, water, medical supplies to the people most in need, and make sure that it doesn't go and end up in the hands of Hamas.
Matthew Moore, our political correspondent, thank you so much for that update. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has welcomed the hostage deal as well between Israel and Hamas. In a statement, she said the European Commission will do its utmost to use this pause for a humanitarian surge to Gaza. Let's get more on the European reaction from DW correspondent Rosie Bitchute, who joins us now from Strasbourg, which is where the European Parliament meets. Good to see you, Rosie. The EU has welcomed the hostage release at today's plenary debate. What more have you heard from EU officials there?
Officials and lawmakers from the EU have been gathering in this room behind me. And of course, the first message was really one of a wholehearted welcome. The EU said it, however, reiterates its call for all hostages to be released. And there was talk again of trying to use this expected pause as a way to surge humanitarian aid into Gaza. And with that in mind, the bloc's humanitarian aid chief called for greater humanitarian access into Gaza so that the aid the EU is sending can actually make it in. Now, beyond this, there's also been a bit of reflection here about the longer term, looking back and looking to the future. And the EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, issued what I would say was a bit of an indictment of the bloc's foreign policy over the last few years, because he said basically for decades the EU has been talking about a two-state solution in the Middle East. That is what the bloc officially calls for, but he said that has been backed up by very little action.
I wanted to actually ask you about Josep Borrell's comments, because obviously very directly addressing the lack of unity.
The reality of the two-state solution would be Gaza, and the West Bank would not be part of Palestine. It would be probably just Gaza Strip, and that the West Bank is really part of the biblical boundary. See, this is the problem with the two-state solution. It's not following the precepts of that boundary system that has been circumscribed in the Old Testament. And that means also the ownership of Jerusalem. That means the ownership of the Temple Mount. That means the Dome of the Rock comes down, right? So a two-state solution and give them Gaza, yeah, fine, right? Because there's enough interpretation of where the boundaries are that the Gaza Strip isn't part, it's possible that it's not part of that circumscribing original boundary. But there are territories within Jordan, in Lebanon and in Syria that are part of the Israeli border, biblically. All right. So this is a bigger problem. It's not just a two-state solution. It's actually having other countries around Israel giving land back to Israel. And that also means parts of the Sinai Peninsula. That means Egypt. See, there's been relatively stability with Israel and some of its neighbors because Israel kept on giving land away, all right, after the war, after the Yom Kippur War, right? So, but then it flares up again. So it wasn't lasting. So to get back to lasting peace, you have to have the borders of the biblical borders, and then the Dome of the Rock comes down, and then the temple's rebuilt. So a two-state solution. All right, okay, move all the Palestinians to Gaza, level the place, move them all there. They can make, nice condos, right? And they can be self-governing, and the West Bank is part of Israel. But what's going to happen is that you have these types of people, the UN, that will not follow that line of thinking, that line of negotiation, and they're going to try to solidify the West Bank as part for the Palestinians. That's totally 100%, no matter what your interpretation of the boundaries are. That is 100% Israel's, not the Palestinians. There is some interpretation for the Gaza Strip that that's not part of Israel biblically. All right, so you give them that, but West Bank is not. Parts of Jordan, western parts of Jordan, they're not parts of Western Jordan. They're actually Israel. Northern, parts of that northern border are Israel, not Lebanon. So it's a bigger issue. And if you don't solve the big problem, you're just going to kick the can down the road. The best way to handle this, I personally think, is war. The war makes it happen. War makes it solidified. You're not going to
unity in the EU when it
agree.
comes to conflict. I mean, was that picked up in today's debate at all?
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting. Usually EU officials will try and kind of paper over the cracks in the division. Of course, 27 different member states have different opinions, but here Borrell, the EU foreign policy chief, really acknowledged it. He said there has been disunity, the EU hasn't spoken with one voice. And he said that he's trying to converge so that the EU can bring some sort of diplomatic weight here. Now, since the start of this, since October 7th attacks, the EU has been united in its condemnation of Hamas, and it's united in its call for the release of hostages. But where it has been divided is in how to move forward, and particularly some EU member states have been calling for a ceasefire. For example, Ireland, Spain. Others have been much more reticent on that, fearing that could only serve to embolden Hamas, which is, of course, recognised by the European Union as a terror organisation. Now, with regards to all these divisions, which are still in place, I think critics would say that while these important deals, like the one we heard about today, are being negotiated, it looks like the EU really seems to be much more of a bystander than any sort of a real major broker here. And that's what Borrell seems to be referring to when he said he would like to try and converge positions in order to bring some sort of geopolitical influence in the future.
Okay, and Rosie, we've talked about this humanitarian surge to Gaza. Can you just give us a few more details about the humanitarian aid? What's been discussed about that?
So the European Union has around quadrupled its humanitarian aid to Gaza since October 7th. So that's things like medical supplies, things like food. And that's been pretty much accepted by all member states. It's not been really a big source of division. Where there has been more debate, Anya, is when it comes to development aid. So that's long-term funding, which goes to Palestinians. So, for example, for infrastructure, for education. And there we heard at the very early days after this original attacks by Hamas, an announcement that the EU would be reviewing its development aid to Palestinians. There was, in fact, an announcement that it would be suspended, and then that was retracted. Part of this whole, what looked at the time like a real foreign policy muddle. The EU has now announced that it's completed its review of that development aid funding, and that it hasn't found any major cause for concern or any suggestion that funds have been diverted to Hamas. That was the fear that had initially been raised, but it does say it's going to be looking at a bit more measures for scrutiny, increased scrutiny for this kind of long-term development aid to Palestinians. That in itself has proved divisive, because we have some saying, well, if you haven't found any cause for concern, this is not the time to be adding additional barriers. But of course, within this really heated geopolitical context, that's what the European Commission says is needed moving forward.
Rosie, thanks so much for that. Really appreciate it. That's DW's Rosie Birchard reporting from Strasbourg.
We take the entire family to Bucks County every year for the holidays. It's a time for all of us to focus on what matters most. The kids never run out of things to do. They even seem to get along most of the time.
And joining me again now in our studio here is DW's Middle East analyst, Shani Rosanna. It's good to see you again, Shani. So as we were saying earlier, we know that this deal has now been agreed, but obviously now it has to be implemented, doesn't it? So, you know, what could go wrong? What are the potential pitfalls here?
So many things can go awry. I mean, Israel has experience from 2014 when there was back then a ceasefire decided upon, and Hamas forces have attacked Israeli forces and killed one of Israel's soldiers. It still holds his body. It's a very painful, traumatic memory for Israel. So they're very much afraid of that, what's going to happen. I mean, can Hamas actually control all of the militants on the ground? Does he even have contact with all of them? Do they all agree in line with this deal? That's one thing, and that's why Israeli forces in the next 24 hours will try to bring themselves into safer positions, because Israel does not plan to withdraw from the Strip. But furthermore, within the deal's mechanism were built securities to assure that to both sides that they will stick to their parts. So this is what we're talking about, installments of 4 days. So every day, Israel first will need to cease the fire. I mean, we're starting tomorrow morning. Hamas, when he sees that, he will need to release the hostages only after they have been accepted by Israeli side, not just Red Cross, but by Israeli soldiers. Then Israel will release its prisoners. There's all these mechanisms. There's also inside the Gaza Strip another force. This is the Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian, another militant armed group, and they're not officially part of Hamas, and they have the freedom, as they see it, to always try and act against Israeli forces. So that's also a very sensitive issue. Israel promised any violations will be responded with disproportionate amount of power, which we've seen Israel quite capable of applying in the last 47 days. So the Qataris, the Americans, everybody who's brokering this deal are very much careful for the details. Everybody know it's going to be a very slow progress, one step after another.
Okay. What about Israel's northern border? I mean, do we know if the agreement also includes Israeli actions against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon? And if so, how likely is Hezbollah to observe a truce?
Well, yesterday was one of the most deadly days along the border with Lebanon, between Israel and Lebanon. So surprisingly, Israel was expecting today to see a lot of retaliation. Actually, Hezbollah has been quite quiet today. We've also seen Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah meeting this morning with Hamas leaders, and we're expecting to see the Iranian foreign minister in Beirut this morning. So obviously, these two places are aligned. Officially, however, it's not part of the deal. We have seen Hezbollah seeing itself as the backup for Hamas. If there will be escalation, if there will be an unexpected turn of events, we probably will see also Hezbollah responding with an escalation. But so far, it seems like all sides that we are being seeing active in the last couple of weeks willing to slow things down to de-escalate.
Okay, so there's a sense of hope there, but you've also made very clear how complicated and tricky this situation is. Now, we are hearing that there's an option to extend the truce if Hamas releases additional hostages. Right. So do you think that there is a realistic chance of a longer ceasefire coming up?
Well, there is, because Hamas benefits from more time to regroup, recoup, and actually hoping that the longer Israel pauses its fighting,
the liberal community is played right into Hamas's game. because of the emotional fallacy of the carnage with the civilians as Israel is conducting the war, and the emotional fallacy with the hostages. And my concern is that we're going to kick the can down the road, and it's going to get a lot worse. A lot worse. You know, it's better to do it now. It's better to root them out now.
The harder it's going to get for it to resume fire because of international pressure, but also for technical reasons of what's happening on the ground. So the assumption is that Hamas will try to deliver 10 to 12 more hostages every day in return to a ceasefire. That's the formula agreed upon. The assumption is that it could bring Israel's released hostages to up to 80 and not just the 50 officially agreed upon. And this is also a bit of concern in Israel, mostly in the right-wing parts of the government. They're afraid Israel will be drawn, to follow Hamas's lead, to get in more and more hostages released, and will deviate from its main goal to get rid of Hamas's control over Gaza and not to resume the fight. That's the biggest concern. We've seen Netanyahu and all the cabinet yesterday meeting trying to reassure Israel is determined to resume fire once the deal is done. The key is we don't really know when the deal will be done.
All right.
I mean, how many days is it going to take?
Okay, but we will be watching closely. Our Middle East analyst, Shani Rosanas. Thank you so much, Shani. Now, I'm very pleased to welcome Gidi Rollman, brother of Yaden Rollman from Be'eri, a German citizen who was kidnapped with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Welcome to DW. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been almost 7 weeks of heart-wrenching uncertainty for you and the hundreds of family members whose loved ones were taken hostage by Hamas on October the 7th. Can I ask you, what are you feeling right now?
It's everything you wish for. Your site traffic is skyrocketing until this happens. Be careful what you wish for. Build your site on a platform that's in.
First of all, we are feeling thrilled. We were waiting for this deal. We were very firm that we support this deal.
Trust me, the egoism to have your loved one come back because they're a hostage and not focus on the long-term issue of more death and destruction on both sides, the Israeli side and on the Palestinian side, by not having a long-lasting peace, is egoism, and that they're being judged. They're buying into emotional fallacy. I know it sounds cold. What I'm saying is very cold, but his concern about his family member, more so than the overall world community at large, as terrorism metastasizes, because we don't have a real solution to the problem, he's going to be judged. It's the wrong answer. It's the wrong answer.
This deal for the last few weeks, since it came into critical stages before approval. I think that it's our moral duty. I'm not talking only as a family member, but also just as a human being, as an Israeli and German citizen. It's our moral duty to start bringing dozens of people back to make sure that
the moral duty to bring back dozens of people, but how are you solving the problem by doing that? The only way you're going to solve a problem with Esau is to kill him.
Sure that they are safe and they are alive, and mostly when we're talking of most vulnerable people like kids and women. And so I'm excited. I want to see them back already. I want to see the photos. I want to see this.
Yeah, but you kick the can down the road, and more kids, more family members will die in the long run. Bad idea. But this is the problem with most people. They try to solve a problem because of their own ego, and not realize that ego may actually set in motion, create a pernicious situation that will make things worse down the road. This is why the last crisis, I kept on saying, you have to close the labs. You have to shut them down and hold the people that developed the weapon systems that be held accountable. But people didn't listen. And it created a pernicious situation where it'll get worse down the road. And not only that, it opens up the door to actually, instead of doing dark operations, to create a biodefense force that is funded not in black ops, but it's funded in light ops.
This change of dynamics, by talking only about war, started talking about life. Of course, at the same time, I'm pretty anxious. It's not clear if among the women that are related to this deal and the mothers, my sister Ellen, who is also a mother to a 3-year-old child, that she was able to rescue from being kidnapped, is among the people who are going to be released. So we are anxious and we are hopeful. It's a mix of many emotions.
I can imagine. I did want to ask you whether you had any more information about who exactly will be released.
Not one thing about solving the problem long term. Selfish piece of shit.
Be released.
No, I think that nobody has. Unfortunately, I assume that even our government doesn't know exactly who is going to be released, and we will know daily, as the agreement describes, as far as my understanding. Only the day prior to the release, every day we will know who are the people who are expected to be released. It is horrible, it is painful, but this is terrorism. This is mere psychological terrorism, and we all need to be resilient and strong in order to go through it. This is how terrorism is constructed.
I presume as well that then you won't know anything about the hostages' condition, whether they're in good health, until they actually are back.
Well, hopefully they will be finally be open to visits of the Red Cross. So far, the Red Cross has done almost nothing for the Israeli humanitarian issue of this conflict, and they will, according to the declaration of our Prime Minister yesterday, they will be given permission to visit and take care of the hostages that will not be released. So I believe that is a step forward.
Can I ask whether you have been consulted or in any way involved in these negotiations to get the hostages back?
No, let's not exaggerate. Nobody's consulting me in this level we're talking about.
On Bloomberg, they're doing an advertisement for A-Rod and his financial company. He invests in companies, and he makes this phrase, we're looking, we're a lot of singles and doubles and blah blah blah. A-Rod's such a fucking dipshit. I mean, total dipshit. And this is a problem with these people that are really that have done really well in sports or even in entertainment. Like music. You listen to them talk, and they're literally retarded. I mean, they've done very well in their domain, but they're literally retarded. And so he promotes his financial company, with these funny phrases, these something that you can memorize and just say in an elevator, in 20 seconds or less. Don't trust people like that. But that's going on a tangent. I am not impressed with this guy that's the German or Israeli citizen that had a family member captured. Not one time has he stated that Israel needs to be strong and defeat Hamas at all costs, and that includes the sacrifice of the hostages. And that also includes the sacrifice of civilians on both the Israeli and the Palestinian side. Because everyone's getting judged. Now, it's cold, and a lot of people don't like hearing that. People don't want to hear the truth. People don't want to hear on how to solve the problem. I saw this during the last crisis. People wanted, they picked the ego route. You listen to the people that were trying to solve the problem. It was a very egoistic mentality that was going on. And I'll tell you, use that egoism as a litmus test or as a test, and you'll start to realize that many people are making decisions based on self-interest and egoism, and not on the actual trying to help people in general. Now, yes, there's going to be, you can't be altruistic all the time. All right, maybe someone that's a saint might be, but most people aren't that way. The sad thing is that most people are more on the egoistic side, not on the altruistic side, and it's a major problem. And you're seeing it playing out in this crisis right now. The altruistic side of this is saying there are really bad people out there that need to be eliminated. And yes, in the short term, there's going to be carnage, but in the long term, it's going to be beneficial for everyone. But playing to the emotional fallacy, oh, the kids are dying, or there's civilians dying, or there's hostages, will only kick the can down the road and not solve the problem. And this is why we're at the place that we're at. It's going to get worse. It'll get worse. We listen to people like this, even though he has skin in the game.
We're talking about the highest levels of professional officials. It's not even a political negotiation. It's really an expert negotiation. Of course, we try to give our 10 cents for this matter and deliver some messages, but it's way above our level. And I think it should be like this. And that's what enables it to be a professional negotiation and to get to the line where we are at the moment.
Okay. Now, what about the remaining hostages not due to be released in the coming days? Is there any sense at all whether they are still alive even?
Unfortunately, there is no clear answer to this question. The assumption is that many more hostages are alive beyond these 50 hostages. The agreement also talks about hostages beyond the first 50 or so, that if Hamas will be able to gather them and to assemble them towards release, we'll be able to continue this humanitarian pause day by day. We hope to see that. We really hope to see that this is not going to end after 4 days. There's going to be severe continuation of that. And then we'll understand how many people, at least among the category of women and children, are alive and available for release. Now, I believe that much more people are alive and can be released, and that might take a while longer. But it doesn't mean that after this deal, this is the end of the civilians and soldiers that can be saved. I think that we will need to be ready for more pressure and more resilience and patience until everybody will be released.
I know that many of the affected families have expressed concerns that the Israeli military can't keep pursuing its military campaign against Hamas while at the same time trying to secure the safe release of the remaining hostages. But we have heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I quote here, to continue the war to destroy Hamas. Can I ask you for your reaction to that?
I think that our cabinet has proven so far that the two goals of dismantling Hamas and protecting our borders and our security, and the ultimate and very sacred goal of bringing the hostages back are not conflictual so far. The military pressure is the only language we see that Hamas understands, and that's what brought us to the point where we can release so many of our civilians at the moment. So I think that those two goals, as the Prime Minister indicated, are not conflictual, but integrated into each other. At the same time, it's important to say that it's the military's, the IDF responsibility to conduct this operation in a very calculative, careful manner. And I think they have proven to be doing that so far. And my expectation and even demand that it will be conducted as such also in the long run. But we want to see all the hostages back. We understand that it might come.
I think his answer to that question was good, except that the hostages coming back is a secondary, not a primary, and not equal to the rooting out of Hamas, because rooting out Hamas will save more lives in the long run.
With difficulties to the military, and we see already that they are willing to do this move. But we also want to see a secure and safe Israel for all citizens.
Gili Roman, brother of kidnapped Yarden Roman, I'd like to thank you so much for your time.
All right, that was DW news. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Goodnight formula that I have on my store. This has tryptophan and melatonin in it. It'll help you to get into the 3 cycles of REM sleep. You take this every day, it'll allow you to be able to get that restful sleep, and it's part of that protocol. Proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation, proper sleep, right? Proper brain activity, trying to challenge yourself, and you're going to age slower. I've noticed that people that are in their 80s that are really, with it, they're very sharp. They write, and they read, especially writing, and that activity of writing. And I'm not talking about like tweeting, right? I'm talking about like literally writing like long essays or books and stuff. So, or a novel or stuff like that. These people are very smart, but if they take care of their body, ones that don't take care of their body, then they're going on the other way. But proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep is a big part of it. So please get the Goodnight formula and get the restful sleep. There's a lot of people in the United States, because of anxiety and because of worries and whatnot, they're not sleeping properly, and you need the 3 REM cycles. One, it helps to detox your body, because your body is actually detoxing throughout the day, but really it's resetting itself and cleaning itself out at night while you're sleeping. So if you have disrupted sleep, you're disrupting your normal detoxification that takes place, and so your lymph system isn't filtering out properly the way it should be, all right, because you're not sleeping properly. On top of it, there's an accumulation of toxins throughout the day, even in your brain, that gets built up, and that if you're not getting proper sleep, you're not being able to filter those toxins out through your CSF, the cerebral spinal fluid. So, there's been evidence to show that improper sleep may lead to a buildup of proteins and toxins that may lead to lost memory and poor brain function over time. So proper sleep is is very, very important. So please go to my store and get the Goodnight formula and follow what I'm doing. In addition, please get the deodorants that I have partnered up with Rainbow Herbals. These deodorants are for males and females. It's made in citrus, and the other one is made out of peppermint and a lavender tea tree. And what they're made out of is essential oils from the Himalayas. It's a very, very high quality deodorant that will help to detoxify your body. You use it every day. Very high quality ingredients in this. Essential oils from the Himalayas. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the deodorant bars that I have. Those are some of the great products that I have on the store. Please also subscribe to all 3 of my YouTube channels. The links are in the description. Please subscribe to Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Links are in the description. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Links in the description, and purchase the products. Or you can also donate on the homepage at the very bottom. You can donate through Stripe or PayPal. You can also donate through Buy Me a Coffee. Link is in the description. Please, if you can, help support my news coverage by subscribing, being a paid subscriber to my Patreon account, my Patreon channel, and that will help to cover the news. Now, all my content that I have done, talking about the news, talking about the last crisis, talking about some health, things, that's all for free for people. And it's through the kindness of others that are buying the products and through the donations that allow that to be possible. I don't put my content behind a paywall like a lot of people do. All right. So please go to my store, get the health products that I offer, buy the books that I have, or if you can, please donate. There are a lot of people that are international viewers that can't purchase the products that I have in my store, but would like to help support me. Well, you can help support me in a lot of different ways. You can help support me by donating, or you can make sure that you take my videos and share the links and ask for people to subscribe to my channels, especially the larger channel. There's a censorship that's going on with individuals on YouTube. I'm not the only one. A lot of people have been complaining about it, and they bleed subscribers on a regular basis every time you post. So please share the links and ask your social network to subscribe to my content. I would really appreciate it. I have a lot to say. You may not agree with many things that I say. That's okay. But there's going to be things that I say that are going to be important for your life. And that is in terms of health, financial, or navigating through some tumultuous times. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.